Killer Kyle Clifford watched Andrew Tate videos before murdering his ex-partner, her sister, and her mother.
Kyle Clifford, a former British soldier and private security guard, was found hiding in a cemetery almost 24 hours into a manhunt.
On 9th July 2024, 26-year-old Kyle Clifford knocked on the door of a quiet house at 19 Ashley Close, which is located in Bushey, Hertfordshire, United Kingdom. And it looked like he was dropping off some stuff that belonged to his ex-girlfriend. But that's not why he was there. Kyle had come with a knife, a crossbow, and a murder on his mind. Over the next few hours, something truly horrifying happened inside that house. Three innocent women, 25-year-old Louise Hunt, her older sister Hannah, who's 28, and their mum, Carol, who was 61, lost their lives in the most brutal way. And the man behind it all? A psychopath who worshipped people like Andrew Tate, hated women, and thought the world owed him something. Before we start, this story contains graphic that may be disturbing for some people. If you are sensitive to such material, please consider skipping this video and prioritize your well-being. And I'll see you in the next one. Kyle Clifford was born on 5th April 1998 in Enfield, North London. Now on paper, you'd say he had a very troubled upbringing, but that's putting it way too nicely. His home life was a disaster, the kind of a place where violence didn't even shock anyone, it was just a normal thing. Kyle was the third of 4 siblings, and get this, his older brother Bradley was already behind the bars for murder. Back in 2018, Bradley ran over an 18-year-old boy who had apparently thrown a bottle at his car. When this 18-year-old boy was running away on his scooter, Bradley chased him on the wrong side of the road, driving double the speed limit and crashed into him. When the poor boy was lying there, dying, Bradley walked over and punched him in the head like 9 times in front of so many witnesses. That's kind of a family Kyle came from. Kyle grew up thinking world revolved around him. He was racist, homophobic, transphobic, and hated women with a passion. When he was a kid, he bullied kids at school and walked around like he was some wannabe gangster. When Kyle was 20 years old, he joined British Army. Maybe he thought it would toughen him up or give him some purpose, but it didn't. He was lazy, dodged his duties by pretending to be sick, and really never cared about the job. One of his commanding officers even said he only cares about himself. He's just not fit for the army. Even during his army days, Kyle was getting into drunken fights, and once he left, things didn't get any better. He couldn't hold down a job, always late, barely showed up, and when he did, he acted like he was the boss. He bragged about his killer brother like he was some kind of a legend. And when it came to women, Kyle was disgusting. He'd say wild things, loudly talking about who he wanted to sleep with. Didn't matter if they were in a relationship or not. He got a kick out of making women uncomfortable, like they were nothing more than objects to him. Underneath the fake charm and swagger was a deeply insecure and dangerous man. Someone who hated the idea of women having power of control. And when one woman stood up to him, he couldn't handle it. Instead of walking away, he chose to destroy lives. Louise Hunt was born in 1999, and honestly, from everything people say about her, she just seemed like a lovely, warm-hearted person. She lived at 19 Ashley Close in Bushey with her mom Carol and her 2 sisters Hannah and Amy, and her dad John Hunt. Her mom Carol was just as sweet, a gentle, friendly woman who was all about her family, and Hannah, the elder sister, was doing well too. She had her own beauty business and worked as a skin therapist at an anti-aging clinic. She was also in a steady relationship with a guy named Alex, who later said Hannah was the love of my life and called her his brave queen. You can just feel how much he loved her. Now, here's where it takes a dark turn. Louise met Kyle on Bumble in December 2022. At first, he came across as charming, that type of a guy who's funny, attentive, says all the right things. But slowly, as the time passes by, his mask started to slip. Behind closed doors, Kyle was a different person. He started picking on Louise, making fun of her in private while still acting like Mr. Nice Guy in public. He told her not to wear makeup. He didn't want her to go out late or talking to any male friends. Controlling, jealous, you name it. He even told her that he was smarter than her whole family. Like somehow he was better than all of them. And get this, he used to bring up his brother's murder conviction in casual conversation like it was no big deal. Never said it was wrong. He'd sit around watching Andrew Tate's video at family get-togethers. No shame at all. The judge would later call Tate a poster boy for misogynist, and Kyle soaked up every bit of that toxic mindset. He had some serious road rage and even laughed at videos of animal cruelty. He literally liked watching animal cruelty videos. Meanwhile, while trying to control Louise, he was secretly seeing at least 2 other women behind her back. To her family though, he still kept up the act. Kyle, Louise's mom, thought he was a bit immature but didn't see the full picture. The Hunts, being kind-hearted people, welcomed him. They even paid for the hotel stays and holidays for the couple. Kyle even spent Christmas 2023 with them, and on the surface, it all seemed fine. Smiles, presents, laughter. No one could have guessed the storm that was coming. By June 2024, Louise had finally had enough of Kyle. After being stuck in that toxic relationship for about a year and a half, she decided to walk away for good. She even wrote a note to herself to remind her why she shouldn't go back to him. It listed all the red flags: his brother being in prison, the racist and transphobic stuff he said, his scary road rage, and how he would consistently put her down. She knew deep down that this guy wasn't good for her. So on 25th of June, she officially ended it. The next day, she sent Kyle a really kind and thoughtful message. Even though she was the one being mistreated, she still showed him compassion. She wrote, "I'm sorry, Kyle, but I feel I can't continue with what we have. I owe it to myself to take some space and walk away for my own sanity and health. Thank you for the incredible time we have had this year. I hope you know how much I love you and still will for a long time." Kyle replied with seemed like a mature response. He said, "Thank you for the clarity, Louise, so we can both start our healing process. I love you so much and I will for a long time." Surface, it sounded peaceful, like maybe he was going to accept it and move on. But behind that calm reply, Kyle was absolutely raging. He was heartbroken, yeah, but more than that, he was angry and obsessed. Right after the breakup, he started writing all these dramatic and self-pitying notes. One of them said, "I don't want to live my life without her. I could have gone to therapy, found faith, and become a new, better person, but I just simply don't want to do it." It's chilling when you read that now, because that was the moment he made a choice. He could have worked on himself, he could have walked away, but instead, he started planning something truly evil. Just 3 days after the breakup, on 28th of June, Kyle went to a hardware store and bought rope. That was the first real sign that he was preparing to do something terrible. 2 days later, he was online searching for crossbows and watching violent porn. On 1st of July and on the 8th of July, he even had prison phone calls with his brother Bradley. Yes, the same brother who was locked up for murder. And guess what they talked about? They talked about weapons. Then, on 3rd of July, Kyle ordered a crossbow, some bolts, and something called a cocking device to load it. The very next day, he bought duct tape and petrol cans. So not only he was planning to kill, but he was also planning to burn the house down afterwards. By 6th of July, he got a 10-inch steel butcher knife delivered to his place. And then, one day before everything happened, he sat and watched more Andrew Tate videos, fueling all that hate and twisted thinking even more. It's just terrifying how fast it all escalated. One minute, he was pretending to be the heartbroken boyfriend, and the next, he was putting down together a full-blown murder kit. It was Tuesday, 9th of July 2024, and Kyle Clifford was ready to go through with the unthinkable. He packed his car with everything he needed to kill: rope, duct tape, a knife, that crossbow, and drove straight to Bushey. He got there exactly at 1:39 in the afternoon. Before he did anything, he scoped out the house. He checked how many cars were parked outside, trying to figure out who might be home. He even searched online to see if there were any horse races that day, because Louise's dad, John, worked for BBC as the racing commentator. Kyle wanted to make sure he wouldn't be there. So at 2:32 p.m., Kyle knocked on the Hunt family's front door. He had a plastic bag in his hand with some of the Louise's things in it, trying to make it look like he was just returning her stuff, but in his backpack, that's where he kept the knife and the duct tape. Carol, Louise's mom, answered the door, and here's the part that really gets you. She was so kind to him. They stood there chatting for a few minutes, and it was all caught on Ring Doorbell's camera. She even tried to give him some honest, motherly advice. She told him, maybe think in the next relationship the way you are. Try to change. If you carry on like this, you'll end up on your own. And I don't think you are a nasty person, so I wish you good luck. At 2:39 p.m., Carol led him inside the house. And not even 2 minutes later, Kyle attacked her. He stabbed her 8 times in the chest and stomach. She died almost immediately. He then moved her body into a small room off the hallway and covered her with a blanket, like he was trying to hide what he had done. Meanwhile, Louise was just outside in her little garden pod, doing what she loved: grooming dogs, working on her business. She had no idea her mom had just been murdered inside the house. At 3:07 p.m., Kyle went back out to his car, grabbed the crossbow, and walked back into the house. Then he waited, just waited for Louise to come in. An hour later, at 4:12 p.m., Louise finally walked through the doors, and right then, he grabbed her. He tied her wrists and ankles with the duct tape and gagged her so she couldn't scream. And here's the most horrifying part. He kept her alive for 2.5 hours. During that time, he essayed her. So sickening. At 5:52 p.m., Kyle picked up Louise's phone and texted her dad, trying to figure out when he'd be home. John replied, saying he'd be working late until 7:30 p.m. Then, at 6:50 p.m., the doorbell camera picked up a sound of a crossbow firing. Yes, Kyle shot Louise in the back at close range. She died instantly. Just 2 minutes later, at 6:52 p.m., Louise's sister Hannah came home from work. She called out, wondering why no one was answering the phone, but instead of her mom or sister, she found Kyle. The moment she saw him, she started screaming. In the chaos, she managed to send a desperate message to her partner, begging him to call the police. But Kyle shot her too, right in the chest with the crossbow. Then, as if it was nothing, he gathered all his weapons and left the house. Even though she was critically injured, Hannah somehow managed to call emergency services at 6:58 p.m. She gave them the address, and then the call cut off. Police and paramedics got to the house at 7:10 p.m. They did everything they could, but it was just too late. Carol was pronounced dead at 7:23 p.m. Louise at 7:31, and despite fighting to stay alive, Hannah passed away at 7:51 p.m. 3 beautiful lives gone in just few hours, all because of one man couldn't handle a rejection. The minute police saw the CCTV and the doorbell footage, they knew exactly who they were looking for. By 9 a.m. the next morning, 10th of July, his name and photos were out in public. Armed police were out searching all over, first in Bushey and then in Enfield. That's where he was from. Turns out, Kyle had not run far at all. He was actually hiding in bushes at Lavender Hill Cemetery, just few minutes away from his home. Creepy, right? Around 6:30 p.m. that evening, when police finally closed in on him, Kyle tried to take the coward's way out. He turned the crossbow on himself and shot a bolt to his chest. It didn't kill him, but it did paralyze him. From that moment on, Kyle was never going to walk again. Police got him into custody less than 24 hours after the murders. He was rushed into the hospital where he stayed for 3 months. All that time, he was handcuffed to his bed and watched over by armed officers. And when police finally got a chance to set him down, he didn't say a word, just kept repeating no comment to every single question.
Based on the evidence, that this is a premeditated murder of 3 people. Do you accept that you have meticulously planned this murder from the moment that you split up Louise? From the moment that she sent you that text message at the end of June, you began to plan her murder? Yes?
But honestly, they didn't need his words. The evidence was everywhere. On 17th of September 2024, Kyle was officially charged with murders of Carol, Hannah and Louise, and also the charges of SA of Louise. At first, he tried to play innocent, pleading not guilty to everything, but on 22nd of January 2025, he changed his tune. He admitted to the murders but not SAing Louise. The court didn't let that slide. The SA charges went ahead, and the trial started on 3rd of March 2025. Kyle didn't show up, not even once. He refused to attend, wouldn't come in person, wouldn't even join by a video link. He didn't want to face what he had done, but the prosecution laid it all out. They showed exactly who Kyle really was, a violent, hateful man who had spent the hours before the murders watching Andrew Tate videos and feeding his own twisted beliefs. After just 4 days in court, the jury only needed 45 minutes to decide. Guilty, he essayed Louise. Then came the sentencing. On 11th of March 2025, Kyle once again refused to show his face, but John Hunt, Louise and Hannah's father, Carol's husband, stood up and spoke. And what he said, it shook the room. He looked Kyle dead in the eyes, even though he wasn't there. But he said, Louise gave your relationship so much effort, which you were never able or willing to match. We all offered you kindness, especially Carol. Do you remember her kindness, Kyle? How she urged you to get some relationship help and guidance. You calmly accepted that advice on the doorstep, and then, 2 seconds later, savagely stabbed her 8 times and ended her life. John didn't stop there. He went on. You are a psychopath who, for the duration of your time with Louise, managed to pretend to be a normal person, but she saw through you. She figured you out, and she said, enough is enough. I hope women everywhere see Louise's strength as a light and a beacon for their own lives. And then he finished with words that sent a chill down everyone's spine. Whatever sentence you are about to receive, whatever misery lies ahead of you for next 60 years, remember that after your days on earth are done, on your dying day, there will be no release for you. The screams of hell, Kyle, I can hear them faintly now. Judge Betham didn't hold back either.
For possession of an offensive weapon, the crossbow, 1 year's imprisonment, concurrent. For the possession of an offensive weapon, the knife, 1 year's imprisonment, concurrent. For the murder of Carol Hunt, life imprisonment with a whole life order, the early release provisions are not to apply. For the false imprisonment of Louise Hunt, 8 years imprisonment, concurrent. For the rape of Louise Hunt, 20 years imprisonment, concurrent. For the murder of Louise Hunt, life imprisonment with a whole life order. The early release provisions are not to apply. For the murder of Hannah Hunt, life imprisonment with a whole life order. The early release provisions are not to apply.
Kyle Clifford was sentenced to a whole life order. That means no parole, no release, he'll die in prison. The judge listed every reason why this was the only option. 3 brutal murders, rape, domestic abuse, and the fact that Louise and Hannah likely knew their mom had been killed before they were. The suffering he caused, it was beyond words. And now, he'll never see the outside world again. Not ever. And that is it for today, guys. What are your opinions on this case? please mention it down in the comment section. And if you like true crime stories like this, please make sure you subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.